Lincoln 103, 5 Lincoln 102, Lincoln 103 and 102.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
Henry 8, Henry 9. Respond to gate 437 Bravo for your dignitary detail. 3K 911 unattended, 400 lower level near carousel 4, black bag. GTA in progress, 401 parking structure, section 4 boy.
Responding to 401 parking structure, section 1 boy.
415 passenger onboard aircraft.
Control 2 Franklin en route.
484 suspect, is female, Hispanic, 28 years of age, blue jeans, no further.
Control 5 Frank 401 is en route.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Private Officer Beat Radio. We are here this early morning just to meet up with you. That's right. The Private Officer International sponsored radio show is on the air on this Friday morning, bright and early. I'm your host, Rick McCann. I am not a morning person, I must confess, never have been. I always worked the overnight, or what we used to call back in the day, the power shift. That was from 8 p.m. until 4:30 in the morning, when everything happened, when all the action was occurring, all the hot calls, all the gun calls, gave us the opportunity to really cruise on through the city without a whole lot of traffic. And it also allowed us to kind of sneak up in the dark and really snag quite a few drug dealers and suspicious persons, burglars. But the overnight shift just doesn't work when you own a business and you have responsibilities that are far greater than yourself. And it's a shame. I wish I could just work that overnight again, but it's impossible. So what I'm trying to tell you is here I am with a Starbucks coffee and my partner in crime, Brett Davis, and we're kicking it, hanging here in the studio to bring you this edition of the Private Officer Beat Radio. Hey, before we go any further, let me just go ahead and say thank you so much to our sponsors. We definitely want to recognize Bricks Clothing in Mount Juliet, Hickory, Tennessee, the Nashville area. Chief James Hambrick, Police Chief of Mount Juliet Police, great guy, has helped us so many ways, and he's going to help us again this year by allowing us to have our memorial service there at the Mount Juliet Police Department once again. I believe this is going to be the third year that he's done that. Chief Hembrick is a great guy, and we just love him to death. He has been a great friend to Private Officer and to our personnel and members in the greater Nashville area. Him and our chapter manager over there, Mike Thornhill, great friends together, and they really look out for one another, and we really appreciate him. So if you need a new suit, let me tell you, this guy, for a police chief, he really knows how to dress. I'm telling you, he can knock it out of the park with some really nice-looking suits. Check out Bricks Clothing, Chief Hambrick, and he will definitely help you up and help hook you up with a really good-looking suit. We also, of course, want to recognize our sponsor, Body Armor USA. We've got what it takes to protect you, whether you're looking for body armor or protective gear, protective gloves. If you are working in corrections or the sheriff's department, the police agencies, or private security, we can provide that protective gear that really is going to make a difference when that time comes. So check them out today, Body Armor USA. We have you covered. Our good friends there in New York will certainly look out for you, and they're going to give you a discount just by saying that you are a member of POI. So be sure to, let them know that you are a member, and they will definitely take good care of you. Today we have a lot of things happening, even at this early morning hour. As many of you probably have, been watching the weather, the news. You know that hurricane season has finally kicked it in high gear, and currently 3 storms are in the Atlantic. One just came across the Gulf Coast, making landfall between Alabama and Mississippi. About 100,000 people without power. At least 2 people that we know of died in the storm. The winds were at about 70, just below hurricane strength, caused some flooding and did some damage. Not so bad, but the next hurricane is already a Category 4 in the Atlantic and heading, they say, toward the Atlantic eastern coast, possibly even the Carolinas. North Carolina oftentimes is the target for those Atlantic storms, and we have a lot of Outer Bank coastal areas, historic lighthouses along the South and North Carolina coast, which could easily be damaged, so we're definitely keeping an eye on that. There's another storm kicking up right behind that one, and yet another one still out there further away toward Africa. So definitely now we are in the hurricane season, September, and although it's supposed to be fall, just days away, it really feels more like midsummer with temperatures, at least down in our region, in the 90s, very humid and hot. And that's not good news in the hurricane season, because what happens is with the warmer waters, especially as that storm crosses between the Atlantic and the Gulf Stream, very warm there. Those temperatures are still in the 80s in the Gulf waters, and that really will strengthen that storm. And so we really have to keep an eye out over the next week or two. I noticed our storm-warned weather that we get right here in the studio, that there's a lot of bad weather moving in next week in our territory, in our region, so we're definitely going to keep a close ear to the weather, and we really caution you to do the same, especially if you live along the Gulf Coast or the Atlantic, because it's definitely hurricane season, and it's definitely kicked up a bunch of storms. We have a lot of other things that we want to talk about. Before we go to our first break, I do want to let you know, if you are a POI member, and who wouldn't want to be, because we are the voice of the frontline protector, private or public, and we have a lot of great benefits to offer our members, and it really connects you to a support system that private security normally doesn't have access or availability to, and that's why we began our organization 15 years ago, and that's why we are still today the strongest security law enforcement association, and growing every day. But we have a brand new feature for you. If you are a POI member, maybe you received an email recently telling you about it. Actually, we have 2 brand new features. I'll tell you about one right now before we go to our first break, and then we'll pick it up on the way back from that first break and tell you about the second one. But the first one, and we're very excited about this, is every week you'll receive in your email box a training tip, about 2 or 3 minutes long, nothing too big, just a heads up, a refresher, a reminder. And there's so many different topics that we'll be covering. I think this is going to be a big hit. I think it's going to be enjoyable for all of our members, and I think it's going to be a big help. So we're definitely very excited about that. Be looking for that sometime early October, in about 3 weeks or so. And again, it's only for members at this time. It may go to non-members in a few months. We'll see. This is going to be a trial to see how well it's received. I also Want to remind you now, the third week of September, every single year, annually, for the last 15 years, Private Officer International has sponsored the annual Private Officer Memorial to recognize and acknowledge the fallen officers, the men and women of private security and private law enforcement that have given their life to protect life and property through the years. And this year we have about 127 that have lost their lives, and we're going to be recognizing them, adding them to the wall of memory. And we want you to, if you are a badge-wearing person, whether it be plainclothes or uniform, we want you to drape your badge in black, as we normally ask every year, and take a moment during that week of silence to recognize and honor those fallen men and women, those private officers across the country. We also want to remind you that if you would like to sponsor a memorial service, this is a full-blown memorial service in your area. We usually have the honor guard, the color guard. We have speakers from local government, law enforcement, even sometimes state senators and U.S. senators have been in our midst during these events. If you'd like more information, please contact helpdesk@privateofficer.com. helpdesk@privateofficer.com. And on one final note, be sure to go to our website, privateofficer.org, and do two things. One, definitely sign up for a membership if you're not already a member. And two, we really need for you to donate to our memorial fund. We only ask once a year that you donate to our memorial fund, and you can simply do it right there online, any amount, at privateofficer.org. On the right-hand side, just click under the officer down, and you'll see the link to donate. These funds are used to assist those officers injured and also to help the families of deceased officers. We also use those funds sometimes, periodically, to help Crime Stoppers to locate information when they're trying to locate a murder suspect who has killed a private security officer. We are going to take our quick break, but when we come back, we're going to give you one more new feature that's coming up real soon. We're going to be talking about security officers' use of force, deadly force, and also we've got a brand new study that we'll be releasing next week that you don't want to miss, and a whole lot more. And, of course, like every single week, we have a ton of breaking news that we want to bring to you. So don't go away. We are coming right back here on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
You're on your way to meet up with friends, but you can't seem to get anywhere quickly. You don't want your friends to be annoyed, so you text. You're on your way. Five seconds is the average time your eyes are off the road while texting while driving. Make sure you get where you're going.
Are cracking down on seatbelt violations. Buckle up day and night or expect a ticket. It doesn't matter who you are or where you live, they'll be on the lookout. Cops write tickets to save lives. Click it for a ticket.
Hey, Good morning, good morning, good morning. Friday morning, bright and early. Sun is shining, at least for now. We got a lot of storms out there in the Atlantic, hurricanes. We got a lot of rough weather heading our way here out along the Atlantic and possibly even the Gulf Coast over the next couple of weeks. So be sure that you're listening to your local weather and keep a weather box close by. These days you can get that right on your cell phone. I know my cell phone sends out the tones and lets me know whenever there's bad weather, any type of watches, warnings in the area, and I'm sure that you can probably get that as well on your phone. Really does come in handy. Well, before the break, I told you about that great new feature, training tips, right there in your email box coming up. It'll be regularly. It's useful information. Some of it might be brand new. Some of it might be just a reminder, a refresher for you, but it definitely will be, I think, a great asset for anyone, whether you're brand new in the industry or you're a seasoned professional. I think it's going to be great, and I've seen it in other professions, and I know it's going to be helpful. But we also have another really cool thing, and this is not only for members, but it's going to be for non-members as well, and this is called Spotlight Views. And this is going to be a spotlight on your business, your school. If you own a private security business, an alarm business, or a training school, on our brand new feature, we're going to feature you, feature your company, the things that you do, the services that you provide your community. We're going to highlight the type of training that you provide your officers or the community. We're going to spotlight all of the great benefits of using your business. This is really free marketing, free advertisement, and it's going to be very, very well distributed, and you don't want to miss out on that free marketing or spotlight on your business. Now, we've had some calls or emails already from members about, will you highlight me individually? We can't do that right now because the program is really meant to highlight a business, but maybe later on we'll throw individuals in here and there. So again, if you have a business or a training school and you want to have your business or school highlighted, be sure to send an email, StephanieK@privateofficer.com. And if you can't remember that, send it to the help desk, and they will forward it on to Stephanie. This is really going to be a cool, no-cost, free way to market, to be highlighted, to be appreciated, and to be recognized in your community. So don't miss out on this opportunity. And it's going to be once a month, maybe every couple of weeks. We'll see how well it's received again, and we'll go from there. But we're really excited about it, and we're really building up to another great thing that we're going to be doing, and we'll tell you more about that coming up in probably 2 or 3 weeks once we finalize all the details. But as always, we have a lot going on. We have a lot of breaking news. We do want to talk in our training segment about apartment security and why the dangers of apartment security are off the chain, as they say. It's really skyrocketed. There's a lot of problems. And I think that really anyone who's working any type of residential security these days, condominiums, apartments, subsidized housing complexes, even hotels, really is chancing it, really risking it these days because of so much activity. And there are reasons for that. And we're going to be putting out a publication later this week in our blogs and other distribution points where we really will explain why those dangers have increased so much over the last 5 to 10 years. But we'll be talking about that later in this show as well during the training half hour that we do at the bottom half of the program. Let me see, what else do we got going on? We always have something. Of course, we just sent out the August awards, officer awards. Now, sometimes we don't do it every month. It really depends on how many nominations we get. And, of course, if you're a member of a POI, you can self-submit a nomination for an award. Your employer can submit a nomination for an award. We can nominate you for an award every month. And in August, I believe we had 12 members and non-members who received awards, including 2 Purple Hearts, both officers involved in shootings where they were injured and they stopped the bad guy. And we had a number of POI members who received the Distinguished Service Award and a couple that received meritorious awards. So really great job by all involved. If you didn't receive that email, you can look it up at privateofficer.org and just click on the award recipients, and they'll be right there. But we try to recognize as many people as we can. And if you're an employer or a client and you want to sponsor or nominate someone, just go to our website and click on the awards portion at privateofficer.org, and you can nominate someone right there. We have, in the last probably month or two, we have seen a lot of shootings, fatal shootings by private security. In fact, we've seen it all year long and last year as well, but for some reason, they've escalated in the last couple of months. Now, on this coming Sunday, we'll be releasing a report that shows you which state has the most fatal shootings by security officers. And we'll list the top 5, and I don't think you're going to really believe who all are going to be on that list. But we have used a number of matrix to calculate which state is the most has the most fatal shootings by security. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we're also going to list the top 10 states that have the most use of force against security. So that's something you're really going to want to see. You're going to want to read in detail because it's going to tell you what state is the most violent for private security. It's been a couple of years since we put this study out, but because of all of the fatal shootings by private security and shootings of private security, stabbings and whatnot, we felt that it was time to really bear down and get the facts and put all the stats together and get this report released one more time because it's very useful in training. It's very useful for companies to know, hey, is this really a good area for me to open up a new office, or is this a good area for me to do business? A lot of people have used that information over the years. So this coming Sunday, if you get our newsletters, it's going to be right there on that very top portion, and I think you're going to want to read it. If you don't get our newsletters, you don't get our breaking news, you can sign up for it right now. It's free of charge, won't cost you a nickel. privateofficer.org. When you go to that website, a box will automatically drop down, and you'll be able to join our email list, privateofficer.org. So much to say, so little time to say it. That always seems to be the problem. And even though it's Friday morning and everyone's looking forward to the weekend, I still got a long day ahead of me. My day has just begun. In fact, my eyes aren't even open. This is my 3rd cup of coffee, and I can tell you what, it's probably going to be a 5-cup coffee day for me, even though it's Friday. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we got a lot of breaking news to talk to you about, and I'm going to introduce you to a couple of friends of mine. You're going to want to really pull up a chair and listen to what they got to say, and then we're going to talk at the bottom half of our time here with you about apartment security. But right now, we got to get these messages on the air, and we're coming right back on the Private Officer Beat Radio.
Every 40 seconds, someone around the world takes their own life. Every 13 minutes, someone in the U.S. commits suicide. While you were getting ready for work this morning, in the first hour of your day, as many as 5 people in the U.S. have killed themselves. By lunchtime, about 20 people in the U.S. have taken their own life. At the end of an 8-hour workday, about 40 people in the U.S. killed themselves. In a 24-hour period, as many as 111 people in the U.S. committed suicide.
Federal Aviation Administration wants you to fly your drone responsibly. Avoid flying your drone near other aircraft, especially near airports. Fly your drone below 400 feet. Always keep your drone in sight. If you see a safety issue involving drones, contact local law enforcement immediately. Fly smart. Fly safe. Have fun.
Sitting over here at the news desk this morning, always a lot of breaking news to bring you, and this week obviously is going to be no different at all. TSA says they are getting a lot more guns, and even in the past week they have recovered 3 grenades. Who would bring grenades onto a plane? Come on. TSA reported this past week that they recovered 82 firearms. 67 of them were loaded. Also, 27 were chambered with a round. Obviously, it's a federal offense to bring a firearm onto a plane or even into a secured area at the airport. TSA says they continue to crack down on firearms because it continues to be a problem. In South Carolina, authorities there say that 300 schools still do not have school resource or security officers, although the state has increased the security safety funding for schools. Many schools do without SROs or security. The governor there, McMaster, said that he is going to put in a bill for more money for the schools, and hopefully that will take care of the remaining schools that are unprotected. The Trinity School District, that's in Washington County, Pennsylvania, say that they've added a canine team to protect their schools, and many schools and hospitals are doing this. Canine teams is very popular these days on campus as well as in hospitals. We're seeing this more and more. Trinity says they have a brand new canine, and the handler is currently working with that dog, and they'll be on duty soon. A disturbance with hospital security in Weymouth, Massachusetts did not end well for Robert Dixie, 49, who was arrested for DUI once law enforcement got on property. They found that he had been driving while intoxicated, and they charged him with a DUI. This all occurred at the South Shore Hospital after he and security got into a confrontation. Pennsylvania, Allentown, Pennsylvania, police say that they've arrested a man during a fight with security. Officers say the man, 33 years old, tried to take a officer's gun. Michael H. Casino has been charged with multiple offenses in that. police say that in Covington, Georgia, a police officer was shot while chasing on foot 3 suspected shoplifters. The police officer has undergone a number of operations and is still in critical condition. In Denver, Colorado, a 40-year-old former Walmart loss prevention district manager has been charged with theft of $830,000. He's facing wire fraud and money laundering there, and also the IRS investigated him as well. Justin Manning had worked for Walmart loss prevention for numerous years. In Chicago, Illinois, 266 employees will not be returning to work this semester or any other semester because the public school system said that they did not pass their secondary background checks. These employees evidently had gone through a primary preliminary investigation, background investigation, but when they went to do the secondary, they didn't pass. BET founder Bob Johnson says a Florida hotel racially profiled him. He says that when he went to check in to the hotel, that they would not allow him to check in because he would not take off his sunglasses. But a spokesperson for the hotel, a very upscale hotel in the Palm Beach area, said that it was mandatory that everyone who checks in must take off sunglasses or any concealing identity so that they can verify who the person is. Another dog story out of Pueblo, Colorado, a hospital, Parkview Medical, also has just put together a new canine security team. A black Labrador now patrols the hospitals, checking for illegal drugs, including marijuana. Marijuana is legal in some areas of Colorado for personal use, but you can't take it into a medical facility. You can't take it into a school. You can't take it out in the public, but people do it all the time, of course. In South Africa, a G4S armored truck was robbed by a mob, security officers beaten, attacked, and then the vehicle was blown up. We think we have it rough here, working security. Should go to some of those other countries where they really face gunfire and explosions all the time, and law enforcement is no place to be seen. In Chicago, Illinois, over the holiday weekend, a Chicago police sergeant committed suicide while on duty. Police responded to reports of gunfire and found the deceased Chicago sergeant. They haven't released his name as of yet. A Houston security officer on patrol of a shopping center found a woman who was stabbed multiple times behind the shopping center near a trash container. The woman, who was in serious condition, has her life because of the security officer, and police say they have no suspects in the stabbing behind the Fallis grocery store at Broadway and Bellefonte. An investigation is underway after security and law enforcement was involved in a Centerville, Illinois fight at a strip club with a man who later was shot by police. Officers say that he pulled a gun and that he did attempt to shoot both the security and law enforcement, and there is an investigation underway. Late yesterday, we also got some breaking news of a security officer being shot and 2 security officers returning gunfire. This happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This was at the Tamarick Place Apartments. A man who was on the ban list, who had been trespassed, was on the property, and 2 security officers tried to detain him. We are working office, and sometimes the phones ring, even though we're in the studio and, it's not 100% soundproof. That just goes to show that we are real. This is not a robocall. This is not a robo announcement. This is real. Although, maybe in the future, we'll have robots that give the news. In Virginia, a deputy sheriff and his wife was killed over the weekend in a motorcycle crash in Page County. Authorities there say that Randall Hensley and his wife Missy were killed while riding their 2016 Harley Davidson, and it crashed. In Myrtle's Inlet, that's Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, an off-duty decorated South Windsor, Connecticut police sergeant was killed when he tried to break up a fight at a bar. Police say the sergeant, a 20-year veteran, 41-year-old Matthew Maneri, was off duty and on vacation, trying to break up a bar fight, and evidently was hit and suffered trauma, which later resulted in his death. In San Bernardino, California, authorities there say at least 10 people were shot Friday night during a disturbance at an apartment complex. Authorities still have not made an arrest there, and we have contacted them regarding whether or not security was involved. We have a brand new training coming up about apartment security. We said earlier today we're releasing some information about the dangers of security at apartment complexes, and later in this program we'll talk about those dangers. A man was fatally shot by a Dallas security officer a few days ago, Saturday night. Authorities say that the man had a confrontation with security after he tried to break up a large party after curfew hours there at the complex. The security officer was assaulted, shots were fired. Police are still investigating that. There's always a lot of breaking news. Be sure to check out the breaking news. Go to our website, privateofficer.org. Sign up for breaking news today, and be sure to follow our news blog. We're going to take one more quick break, and when we come back, we will be talking about the dangers of security working apartment complexes.
There was the explosion, and I remember just opening my eyes, and it got both of my legs. I had surgery after surgery, and what's going to happen next? The Wounded Warrior Project said, look, brother, everything's going to be okay. 3 months from now, 4 months from now, a year from now, you'll be fine. I don't know if I would be as well adjusted as I am now if it wasn't for them.
To learn more, call 1-877-832-6997 or visit woundedwarriorproject.org.
Life is precious. Ask any of these people. They've been given a second chance at life through organ and tissue donation. But there are more than 84,000 Americans waiting for life-saving transplants. 17 people die every day waiting. I didn't know this until I lost my best friend, Lyric. She gave the gift of life to 5 people. That's why I've become an organ donor, too. One decision saves so many lives. Donate life.
In 1963, the average apartment had about 32 units. In 1968, just 5 years later, those numbers climbed, almost tripled, in fact, to 89 units per complex. And in 1978, once again, almost doubled to 143 units. Today, the average apartment complex has 178 units. But remember, I said the average apartment complex. We can find apartments throughout the nation from the East Coast to the West Coast, north to south, with apartment units of 773 to 1,306 apartment units in a complex. A city within a city. The population of an average apartment complex today with 178 units can easily be several thousand people, adults and children, all living that high density, high populated living in tight, small quarters. Even in the larger apartment complexes that are called frequently apartment homes, we find congestion. We find high density living, people coming and going, everyone moving about, everyone living in really a small area. Even in the larger complexes that have multiple clubhouses and things that are designed for comfort, it's a small space when you compare 4,000 people living in a rural town that may have 300 acres or 3,000 acres, and an apartment complex, really you have a much lower acre, a much smaller space. Many more apartment complexes today installing multiple swimming pools and spas, fitness clubs, massages, offering multiple clubhouses. I've seen those that had dry cleaners, post office, fuel, gas stations, convenience stores, and even grocery stores at the doors of the complex or within the complex itself. Social lounges, covered outdoor cooking areas, car washes, and so much more being offered today. Property management companies often selling and marketing their apartment scheme under the guise of staycations, being able to stay home in a beautiful, luxurious complex with all of these amenities and not having to travel to go on vacation. Many gated, upper-end, younger tenants are popping up in every corner of the U.S. Some complexes having up to 8 entrances. Hundreds and thousands of cars traveling in and out of the property every day. Hundreds and thousands of people traveling in and out of the property every single day. So now in America we have 3 levels of apartments. We have the older apartments that are almost always now low income, subsidized properties through HUD, Housing and Urban Development. We have those that are mid-level. They may be newer. They may be some of the older ones from the 70s and 80s. And now we have, of course, the younger crowd living in the higher income. Recently took a poll of apartments in 6 major cities. If you want 2 bedrooms and the basic amenities, you're paying $1,500 to $2,200. 3-bedroom apartments in some areas can go as high as $4,000. Apartments today, unlike any other time in our history, are fast, developed, highly populated, and as I said a moment ago, a city within a city. For private security today to operate on those apartment complexes, it's challenging. There are many things to consider. Of course, you have high volume traffic. You have parking congestion. There's only a limited number of parking spaces, so if everyone's got a couple of visitors and they're all taking up the tenants' parking spaces, we're going to have a problem. We have to consider the flow of traffic. We have to consider the flow of the visitors and tenants, people coming in and out multiple gates and locations, and, of course, all of the attractions, almost like a mini park with the pools and spas and massages and so on and so forth. We have a lot of activity, especially between spring and fall. During those times, we're going to see a whole lot of outdoor activity, and that's where the bulk of our issues and problems and troubles will be. For private security today, taking an account and working on an apartment complex is challenging for a number of reasons, depending on the type of property, depending on the income bracket. You're going to have a lot of the same issues. You're going to have a lot of the same problems, but in some of those complexes, you're going to have much higher crime because it's lower income and subsidized. You're going to have more drugs, more gangs, so on and so forth. We're going to talk about that over the next 2 weeks. Today in part one, we're going to talk a little bit about the apartments themselves, how they're set up, why they became so popular. And then in part two, we're going to talk more about the crime issue, the number of security officers who have been attacked and killed over the last 5 to 10 years on apartment complexes, and the increase in attacks against private security. I also want to draw your attention, as we talk about these apartments, to the downfall of our economy in 2007. You know, a lot of people at that time had their homes foreclosed on. They lived in homes, many of them beyond their means. And when, 2007 rolled around and the economy crashed, thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of homes were repossessed, foreclosed. And where did these people go? They went back to the apartment complexes, and that really helped to intensify the new apartment buildings that are being thrown up in every corner of our country. We have a lot of seniors retiring who are selling their homes and moving back into apartments. Some of them are senior living apartments, and others are just your everyday run-of-the-mill apartments. There are a number of reasons, a number of effects that has caused the apartment boom, and it's a good business for private security, both from the construction end, as security is used to guard the site during the construction overnight and weekend, and then, of course, once the apartments are built, many of them retain security on site. They retain patrol services, they retain response services, and we're going to talk more about that as well. Apartment complexes are like patrolling a town. Every crime that happens within the city limits, within the town limits, is going to happen at the apartment complex, the same as they often do at shopping malls. And we're going to talk about those: burglaries, car break-ins, carjackings, robberies, sexual assaults, rapes, violent shootings, drugs, even murder. So let's get going here as we talk today about apartment security. So the basic duties of security for apartments and security officer duties at apartments really haven't changed that much in the last 50 years. But on the other flip side of that, it's changed considerably. Looking at some of the basic duties of security, we, of course, have access control, whether that be a secured environment or access control passively. In a passive access control, we have security officers patrolling the property, looking for people that look suspicious. Maybe we don't recognize them as being a tenant. Maybe they're acting out of character of a tenant or in a location where tenants normally would not be. So we're passively investigating whether or not they have the authority to be there on the property. Then we have the more hardened access control, usually at a gatehouse of some type, where we're looking for those vehicles entering with stickers that identify them as tenants. I was recently at a complex where they used ID cards, just like if they were at their employer, and they would show the ID card coming through the gate. So I asked one of the officers what stops a tenant who has moved from using the ID card. Of course, he said those are collected at the time of the termination of the lease, but of course we know that's not always the case. So there is some chance of someone who is not really a tenant to still gain access. But at a hardened access control, we're also looking for other forms of ID. We're logging in visitors, service contractors, and personnel who do not live on the property, just like we would at a federal contract or a large employer. Schools sometimes have that type of access control. Other types of duties and responsibilities for security personnel working in apartment complex, of course, we're going to be doing random patrols of the exterior grounds. We're going to be walking through and patrolling clubhouses, pool areas, identifying people that look out of place. We're going to respond to incidents occurring on the property. That might be a loud noise complaint. It could be children who have caused a disturbance. We're going to be responding to vehicle break-ins or thefts of one type or the other. We're going to be taking care of tenant violations, such as maybe trash in places where it shouldn't be, and a whole array of different duties and responsibilities that security has, much like they did 40, 50 years ago. But security has definitely changed, and so too has it changed on the apartment complexes. Many security complex security officers get involved in detaining persons who are committing crimes. They are involved in writing infractions where a condominium or an HOA may issue a fine. Some complexes, security personnel do searches of vehicles. They detain and arrest. We're going to get more into that next week as we talk about the flip side of the security working private apartment complexes, which I said earlier many of them are much like a town within a town or a city within a city. Security officers' duties overall on any property is to protect life and property, but on some we really see them acting more as a quasi-law enforcement organization. Many security officers are injured, assaulted, and even killed working not only the low-income type properties, but the high-income, the higher echelon type apartment complexes, condominiums, and HOAs. And we're going to get much deeper into that next week. For now, though, that's going to conclude this week's Private Officer Beat Radio. And as we always end the show, we ask that you be safe, be blessed, and we'll see you back here on the radio next week, part 2, when we really talk about the harder side of protecting apartments.